If you've been trying to sleep for 15, 20 minutes and you're starting to get frustrated or you're starting to toss and turn, what you should do is get out of bed. You should actually get out of bed, go to a quiet corner, either in your bedroom or another room. Under dim light, do something relaxing or non-stimulating for a period of time. So ideal things would be listening to some gentle music, reading a book in dim light, knitting, whatever. Anything that's kind of relaxing, ideally something a bit repetitive, but something that is non-activating activity. And then when you start to feel sleepy again, as in your eyelids are starting to get heavy or you're starting to find yourself nodding a little bit, that's when you should go back to sleep and try to go back to sleep.
Okay, so many trauma survivors struggle with feeling safe at night. That was me. What are some of the ways that they can create a sense of safety to improve their sleep?
Yeah. So I guess it kind of it speaks to the first question a little bit in that having this routine
Mm-hmm.
that your brain and body will recognize as being your wind down routine that is familiar will help you to feel safe as well, and help to kind of dial down that kind of threat detection centers in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So routine is really important. Techniques like mindfulness and breathing techniques are
Mm-hmm.
also really important for that. There is some evidence that things like weighted blankets can be helpful.
Yes. Yeah.
The evidence is a little mixed, but over time there seems to be a growing body of evidence that can be helpful for reducing kind of anxiety and increasing feelings of safety.
See. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very much a personal thing, really.
Right.
The real focus should be on what feels comfortable and safe to you,
Mm-hmm.
and being consistent with that to create
Mm-hmm.
familiarity. So we know that people who sleeping in an unfamiliar environment, such as a hotel, for example, they always, for that first night or two, don't sleep quite as well. And that's because they're in an unfamiliar environment. Their threat detection centers are dialed up a little bit because they're in this unfamiliar environment. And that's, everybody, that's the general population, not people who have suffered with trauma. People who suffered with trauma, we know, have a hyper acute sense of threat detection and are always turned up to 11 in terms of their threat detection and vigilance that they have. So creating that familiarity and that comfortable environment is really, really important. And
Hey, thank you for listening so far. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to subscribe so you won't ever miss an episode.
And for people who are feeling anxious, stressed before bed, those kind of breathwork techniques, mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
meditation. There's a technique known as constructive worry that can be really helpful as well. That
Mm-hmm.
helps to kind of park your anxieties.
Mm-hmm.
I can explain that in a little bit more detail if you
Yeah,
like. Yeah.
please.
So it's especially useful for people with anxiety and stress and worries. And
Yeah.
the idea is that the problem is a lot of times we live such busy lives that the only time we get to kind of stop and to process stuff is when we go to sleep at night. We
Yes.
turn out the lights, and then because we've not made space in our day to think about things and process things, when the light goes off when we're in bed, that's when our brain goes at 100 miles an hour thinking about everything and worrying about everything. So the idea of constructive worry, and again, this is a very evidence-based technique that has lots of studies behind it that show its effectiveness, is that you make time, ideally not just before bed. You ideally want to do it an hour or two before bed, and you only need 20 minutes or so, but you make time for it to be your worry time, and not
Mm.
just thinking about it and worrying about it, but writing it down. There's something
Mm-hmm.
very special that goes on in the brain when you write something down. And there are lots of apps that can help you to do this. There's a great one made by friends of ours that we recommend, called the Worry Tree. But actually, I'm a fan of doing it with pencil and paper,
Mm-hmm.
because that kind of, it does activate different parts of your brain,
True.
and it does process things in a more mindful and a more kind of focused way.
Mm-hmm.
And but doing it however you do it, if you do it by app or you do it by paper, just doing it is the most important thing. So you allocate this 20 minutes, you write down the things, the three, four, five, six things that are really kind of worrying you or occupying your mind. But you also then, that's in one column. In the next column, you write down a little plan about how and when you're going to deal with it. And taking 20 minutes to put that to put that onto paper or to write it out into an app has been shown to be really, really effective at quietening down that internal chatter,
Yes.
so that when you actually go to
Mm-hmm.
bed and you turn the lights out and you're in silence in the dark, your brain knows, actually, I've dealt with those things. I've got a plan about those things. I don't need to be constantly cycling through those thoughts, and my mind doesn't need to be constantly worrying now. I can just relax and concentrate on going to sleep. So
I
constructive
love
worry
that.
is a really, really useful technique.
I love that. I do something similar to that. Yeah, I don't allow myself at night to sit and think about that. But that's a great idea. I wish I would have known that a long time ago, because because that's exactly what I do. It gets
Yeah.
quiet and I start thinking and I start trying to problem solve. And next thing I know, it's 12 o'clock at night and I haven't fallen asleep and I've got all these world problems on me and I've just created more anxiety for myself and stress.
It's because we all live such busy lives.
Yeah.
This modern life is really hectic,
Yeah.
and if you think about it, the human species is really not that old as a species. We're a couple of 100,000 years old, and in the last 150 years or so, perhaps since the invention of the light bulb. So we've got Thomas Edison to thank for all of this. You know, life has transformed beyond all recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it has. Before then, life was really simple, and we would go to sleep when it gets dark. Not immediately when it got dark, but nightfall would be a sign that it's time to start
Right.
winding down and going to sleep. Now we have 24-hour artificial lighting. We have 24 hours a day access to each other through emails and social
Yeah.
media and God knows what. And so that 150 years is a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms. It's absolutely no time at all. That's not time for nowhere near enough time for any kind of evolutions to occur in our brain to help us to cope with how life is now. So it's no
Yeah.
surprise that so many people struggle to cope with the pressures of modern life, and sleep difficulties are one of the first signs of that, really.
Mm-hmm. That our bodies are stressed and that
Yeah,
something is off.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it keeps getting faster. Things keep getting faster and faster. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta.
There's no let up, is there? No let up.
No, there's not. Ugh. So, what are some gentle trauma-informed techniques to help someone fall back to sleep after waking up from nightmares or night terrors? Because we haven't even touched on night terrors. That's a whole different thing, I'm sure.
Yeah. So night terrors are a different thing. Night terrors are much more common in um, children and less common in adults, and people tend to kind of grow out of them. Um, Night terrors are not particularly well understood, actually. They are not the same as nightmares, so they are
Yeah.
not. They don't happen. Nightmares happen during dream sleep, and we usually remember them. Night terrors happen during deep sleep. They tend to happen in the early part of the night, which is when we get most of our deep sleep. And the sufferer, if they wake from it, um, doesn't remember it at all, really, generally.
Mm.
They certainly don't remember it the next day. And they're really kind of a different kettle of fish. They can be associated with stress, but it tends to be more nightmares that are a longer term problem for people who
Mm.
have suffered with trauma. Um, I guess the first thing to say about this is, if you are somebody who is suffering with long term recurrent nightmares, please go to see a a sleep specialist about it,
Mm-hmm.
because there are really effective treatments for it these days. But what can you do during, at that time during the night? There's a few things. I think the first thing to do is, if you wake up unexpectedly in the night and you're feeling really disorientated and anxious, is first of all, try and orientate yourself
Mm-hmm.
around the room. Touch something, touch your bed, touch your bedside table. Just try to invoke all of your senses to remind yourself where you are and that you're in somewhere,
Grounding
you're
yourself.
somewhere safe. Look around the room, name things that you see. There's my wardrobe, or there's my closet. Rather, you call it closet, don't you, over there? There's my closet. There's my husband. There's my pet dog in the corner. So try and kind of orientate yourself is the first thing. I think the second thing, if you're still feeling really worked up, and that's your fight and flight response going again, think about some of the things that we talked about earlier, particularly things like breath work, mindfulness, meditation, things that can really help to quieten down that stress response that you're experiencing in the night. So that's really, really important. Hopefully, if you're able to do that, you can fall back to sleep relatively quickly. But there is a subset of people who don't manage to fall back to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're being woken up by nightmares or for other reasons. There's lots of reasons why people would wake up. And one of the most important things, most important tips or techniques that we teach to people who are having any kind of sleeping difficulty, is that if you are lying in bed trying to sleep and it's been 15, 20 minutes or so, you mustn't be timing this, because that's going to,
That'll
you're
mess you up
definitely not going to
too.
fall asleep if you're looking at a clock. But if you've been trying to sleep for 15, 20 minutes and you're starting to get frustrated or you're starting to toss and turn, what you should do is get out of bed. You should actually get out of bed, go to a quiet corner, either in your bedroom or another room, under dim light, do something relaxing or non-stimulating for a period of time. So ideal things would be listening to some gentle music, reading a book in dim light, um, knitting, whatever. Anything that's kind of relaxing, ideally something a bit repetitive, but something that is a non-activating activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start to feel sleepy again, as in your eyelids are starting to get heavy, or you start to find yourself nodding a little bit, that's when you should go back to sleep and try to go back to sleep. And if you don't fall asleep and it's been another 20 minutes or so and you feel that you're starting to get frustrated again, you should do the same again and keep doing that until you fall asleep. And the reason being is that people with sleeping difficulties, it can very quickly escalate into long-term chronic insomnia. Because what happens is, whatever it is that's stopping you from sleeping or impairing your sleep, if you lie there for hours on end, getting more and more frustrated, then the more frustrated you are, the more your stress response becomes
Yes.
activated, and the less likely you are to fall asleep. So the first thing that this kind of technique does, it's called stimulus control, but the first thing that this technique does is it tries to remove the stress out of it, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of frustration that inhibits sleep. But inevitably what ends up happening to these people is they're lying in bed all night, getting more and more stressed, more and more worked up, not falling asleep. And eventually their brain starts to associate their bed as a place where
Mm-hmm.
they feel stressed and frustrated, and they're awake, and their brain associates it as this place. And what people who are suffering with
Wow.
chronic long-term insomnia often describe is that their bed feels like some sort of battle zone, or a bed of thorns. This awful
Yep.
place that their brain has pre-programmed them to feel is a place where they are frustrated and stressed and awake and tossing and turning.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting out of bed helps to really break that association of the bed being somewhere where you're awake and around. We call it around hyper aroused.
Yeah.
You're overactive in your mind. And so this technique helps to kind of remove that association and helps to re-establish the association that your bed is somewhere where you should feel calm and sleepy, and you go to
Mm-hmm.
sleep. And that in itself helps you to sleep better.
I did get into a pattern, and I'm finally breaking it, where I'm going to bed at 9, and then I would wake up around 3 wide awake, like, time to get up. And it's frustrating because I'm like, no, 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 I want another hour and a half, but I'm wide awake. And I get out of bed, and my thing is, I don't want to get frustrated, but I don't want to wake up my husband, right? And I'm moving
Yeah,
around a lot. So I'll get up and I'll just go in the other room. And most of the time, within 20 minutes, I'll get relaxed enough and I can go back to bed and I can go back to sleep.
yeah,
Yeah, and that does work. Sometimes it doesn't, and I just stay awake, and it just is what it is. But that thing about being frustrated in bed, yeah, and you don't want to go to bed with that idea in your head too, right? Of, oh, well, am
absolutely.
I going to
Yeah,
sleep
it's
tonight?
it's a recipe for propagating your wakefulness. If you're feeling frustrated and
Yeah,
stressed, we need our brains to be relaxed, calm,
not
um,
working.
and not working hard, feeling safe in order for us to fall asleep. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really important. Really important.
One of the things, when I asked that question about, feeling safe, and one of the things that I will do is I will tell myself, you're safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm safe.
Yeah,
When I feel that anxiety rising up, and that'll kind of stop me and make me realize, and then I can feel myself calming down. But
yeah,
just telling your brain, you're safe. I'm safe.
yeah,
We're okay. We're okay.
yeah. Verbalizing it is a really effective way of doing that.
Yes, yes, very much. So if someone has tried everything but still struggles with sleep, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, your questions about this episode, or really anything that has to do with trauma. So you can comment below, or you can reach out to me at asklisatickle@gmail.com. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. When is it time to seek professional help, and what should they look for in a specialist? I know you touched on this earlier. You've already said a couple of times, if you're dealing with this, it's time. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
what
So,
specialist, what kind of specialist?
so I think it's important for people to be aware that one bad night is not something that we need to overly concern ourselves about.
Right.
Everybody has periods of poor sleep. It's kind of normal. We all go through stressful patches, times when we're not sleeping well. Sometimes there's a good reason for it. Sometimes we just don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Why? But as long as those things correct themselves, then it's fine. We don't need to overly focus on it and worry too much about it. And a statistic that kind of really helped me when I had sleep problems was learning that if you have a really bad night's sleep, there's about an 85% chance that the next night is going to be a good night of sleep.
Yes.
And in the unlikely
True.
event that you then have two bad night sleeps in a row, 2 nights of bad sleep in a row, there's approximately 95% chance that the third night is going to be a good night. And that, for me, was something that really kind of took the pressure off it. I didn't
Yeah.
stress too much after I had one or two really bad nights because I remembered that statistic and I thought, oh, do you know what? I'm sure there's a good night coming. And
Mm-hmm.
because what we often see with insomnia is people get stressed about 1, 2, 3 bad nights, and then they start to really worry about their sleep, and they start to think, "Oh my God, tonight it's going to be the same again. I'm going to feel terrible. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to sleep, and then I'm going to feel awful at work tomorrow." And they just get wound up, and they end up focusing
Yep.
too much on their sleep, worrying too much about their sleep, and guess what? That has the opposite effect that we want it to. It will inhibit your sleep. So the first thing is, if it's a few nights, a week, more than likely it will settle itself down. It will correct itself, and don't worry, try not to worry too much about it. But if you have a sleep problem that's been going on for several weeks, there's no real kind of, there's no real cut-off point. There's nothing that would say, after 2 weeks it's a significant problem, or after 3 weeks it's a significant problem. There are definitions. So, for example, the definition of chronic insomnia disorder states that it should be going on for 3 months or more. But really, those are academic arguments that
Mm-hmm.
don't really, there's nothing magical about 3 months. It's just that somebody who's had it for 3 months is very likely to continue having it without treatment. Really, probably the inflection point at when this can turn into a longer term problem is probably around about 2 to 3 weeks. If it's going on for more than 2 to 3 weeks and there's no sign of it getting better or it's getting worse, then it likely is at risk of turning into a long term problem. So the time to seek help is if it's been going on for a few weeks and it's not settling itself down, and if it's having a significant impact on your day-to-day life,
Yeah.
either in how you feel or in your mental health or in how you're able to perform, any kind of distress or impact on your functioning that's persistent, you should go and see a sleep specialist. And what you should look for is kind of really dependent on where you are. So where I am in the UK, there is no accreditation for sleep specialists.
Mm.
Sleep specialists will work in different specialties. So I'm a general practitioner, as we discussed earlier. There are sleep specialists who have trained as psychiatrists, sleep specialists who
Oh,
have trained as neurologists, sleep specialists who have trained as respiratory doctors. So it really depends on the type of sleep problem.
yeah.
Where you guys are, they have board accreditation for sleep medicine.
Mm.
So in the States, I would say look for somebody who is board certified as a sleep doctor. But it kind of depends on where you are in the world. But you should definitely, if you can, some places you just don't have that choice. But if you can, you should look for somebody who is at least experienced in treating and dealing
Mm-hmm.
with sleep problems, because, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The coverage of sleep disorders in medical school is almost non-existent, which is a real shame. And I think that this is something that will change over time. And it's
Mm-hmm.
because sleep medicine is a relatively young specialty
True.
compared to, say, cardiology or
Right.
or nephrology, the study of the kidneys. It's a relatively young specialty, and so over the coming years and decades, I think it will really work its way into the medical curriculum a lot more. But where we are at the moment, unfortunately, most qualified doctors are not very well versed in sleep. Unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we are.
Or
So
understand.
looking
Yeah.
for somebody who has experience, at least, in treating,
Mm-hmm.
diagnosing and treating sleep disorders is really important. And then it kind of depends a little bit on the type of sleep problem you have. Um, the other really really common sleep disorder that we've not talked about so far is obstructive sleep apnea. If you are suffering with obstructive sleep apnea, then you want to see a respiratory physician, for example.
Got
So
it.
there's a little bit, depends on what type of sleep problem you have, but you should definitely be looking for somebody with experience in
Mm-hmm.
diagnosing and treating sleep problems.
This has been so interesting. And, you gave three really good tips, and you could probably give some more. But, the first one, and you said it throughout, kind of is peppered throughout, is having a nighttime routine so that your brain and your body understands is we're now winding down and we're getting ready to go to sleep.
Yeah,
That was huge. And people don't think about that because, I'm an adult now. I don't have to have a sleep time,
yeah,
we just, I think about that when you said that, well, as kids, we treat our kids that way, but we don't do that to ourselves. And that's so true. And it's so important. And then the other was, what did you call it? The worry time. I
yeah.
love that.
Constructive
So
constructive worry is the name of the technique.
constructive worry. That's what
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
yeah,
So that it's a time set aside, that 20 minutes where you can just do a brain dump, and you can put out those worries on paper, and you can also find solutions so that you're getting it out of your head. That makes complete sense.
yeah,
And then the third one was, if you can't fall back to sleep, give yourself 15-20 minutes. And if you feel yourself getting more frustrated, it's time to get out of bed and go find a quiet corner, do some meditation or read, or just do breathing. Breathing exercises are great for me. That's my number one go-to. They
yeah,
always get me calmed down.
yeah.
And
Same here.
then try going back to bed. Those are three fabulous tips. Do you have any more?
Yeah,
One or two more?
so those are kind of fairly kind of well, I guess the routine one isn't, but the others are kind of fairly specific. what's really important is creating good everyday sleep habits. That's super, super important. Some of them are things that we do during the daytime that
Mm-hmm.
will lay the foundations for having a good night's sleep, and some of them are things that we're perhaps a little bit more used to hearing about that you would do at nighttime. So at nighttime, routine is a really important one, but the other thing that's really important is your sleep environment. So
Mm.
the bedroom, the
Yes.
environment in your bedroom. And the three things that are really important there are light, noise, and temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So we want the bedroom to be as dark as we possibly can get it. We know that the darker the better, ideally, so that if you put your hand in front of your face, you can't see the outline of your hand.
Oh,
That's the
wow.
ideal scenario, because we know that if you can omit all light, if you can get it really pitch black, you are likely to fall asleep faster and you are likely to sleep deeper and get a better
Mm.
quality of sleep. And it can be really difficult to get that level of darkness.
Yeah.
And so, what I have done for very many years now, and what I encourage all my patients to do, is invest a few dollars in a sleep mask. Sleep
Yep.
masks are really affordable and are really effective at cutting out all of the light.
Mm-hmm.
And some people feel a little bit funny about wearing them. They're not used to it, but really after a couple of nights, you really do get used to it. And for me, I couldn't sleep without it now.
Hmm.
And it's something you can easily take with you anywhere you go. You can put it in your luggage and you put it in your bag. And for me, it now feels like something that's giving my face a warm hug before I go to bed. And so not only does my face get a hug, but I also block out all the light and
And
it
sleep
gives
great.
me a deeper sleep. So light is really important. Um, Getting a quiet bedroom is really
Mm-hmm.
important. Um, if you have difficulty with that because you have, I don't know, noisy fridge or noisy air conditioning, or you have noisy neighbors, or you have noisy children, then earplugs are a really cheap and affordable way of getting around that. They are some people just cannot get on with earplugs at all. They just don't like anything being in their ears. But again, that's something that I've used for many years to really good effect. If you don't get on with earplugs and you are in a kind of noisy environment, then white noise can be helpful to
Mm-hmm.
mask the sounds, because it's not. This is about your brain's threat detection again. So even
Right.
though you're asleep, there are parts of your brain that are still awake, scanning your environment,
Mm-hmm.
searching for threats. And something that changes is a threat. Something that's consistent isn't a threat. So having that kind of white noise as a consistent noise,
Mm-hmm.
masking the changes in noise that you might hear due to noisy neighbours or whatever, it can be helpful if earplugs are not your thing. So light, noise, and then temperatures. The last thing, people tend to sleep in an environment that is a little bit too warm. We
Mm-hmm.
need our body to cool down by about a half to 1 degree Celsius, which is about 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit, in order for us to fall asleep. And if you're in too warm a room, it makes it more difficult for our bodies to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So the ideal temperature for our bedroom is 16 to 19 degrees Celsius. That's the scale that we use over here on this side of the pond. I think that's somewhere between 60 to 66 Fahrenheit. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit cooler than a lot of people will have it. But that slightly cooler temperature and you don't need to measure it. It just has to be a little bit, perhaps a little bit cooler than you'd like, not cold. If it's too cold, that will impair your sleep. We just want it
Right.
nice and cool. And that will help your body to drop that slight bit of temperature that it needs to. And again, that's been shown to help people fall asleep quicker and to get a deeper sleep and stay asleep better. So, so the main things in terms of nighttime things are environment and routine.
Mm-hmm.
the good habits that you can do in the daytime are, one is something that you alluded to right at the start when you told me about your kind of earlier adulthood, and then what you changed. So
Yes.
having a regular bedtime and wake up time is
Mm-hmm.
super important. So there's emerging evidence recently that regularity of sleep, so having the same bedtime and same wake up time, is probably as important, if not more important, than the amount of sleep that we're getting, which is really interesting.
Oh.
Really interesting. But having that, what we sometimes call it an anchored bedtime and get up time,
Mm-hmm.
you stick to them every day, including holidays, including
Mm-hmm.
weekends, including days off, that you go to bed at the same time, you get up at the same time. That's really helpful for really kind of promoting a good circadian rhythm, this natural 24-hour cycle of
Oh.
your body clock, the wakefulness and sleepiness of your
Right.
body clock. And it really helps you to both to get better quality sleep
Mm-hmm.
and to feel better and more alert during the daytime. So it
Mm-hmm.
helps, both during the day and at night time. So anchoring your bedtime and your wake up time is a really important one. And the other really important one, that you can do during the day to help your nighttime sleep, is getting outside to get natural sunlight.
Yeah.
That's
Vitamin D.
really, again, for your circadian rhythm. It's really good at improving your alertness during the day and helping to really embed or ingrain your circadian rhythm to help you to sleep better at nighttime as well. And it also, the more natural sunlight that we get during the day, the more it protects us against the harmful effects of artificial light and blue light that we get from artificial lighting and from screens. So you can absolutely counteract that by getting more sunlight during the day.
Well, you know what? I'm doing a lot of right things. I'm so glad that
Yeah,
we
good,
talked. Seriously, I mean, because
good.
like our bedroom, we have it really cold, we have it really dark. We do use white noise because we
Yeah,
have dogs.
great,
And yeah, I don't have a problem falling asleep at all.
yeah.
At all. It's just
Good. There you go.
some
Because you're
yeah.
doing all the things right. You're doing all the things right. And
Yeah, yeah.
the idea is that you create this environment and you create these habits that promote good sleep, and
Right.
then you make them part of your normal everyday life. They're part of
Mhm.
your natural routine. You don't think about them too much, and you stop thinking about sleep. Good sleepers don't think about their sleep. They have good habits, and
Right.
they get into bed, they fall asleep, and they get on with their day the next day, and they feel great for it. So that's the idea: is you really kind of create the conditions that
Mhm.
allow for good quality sleep, and you let sleep do its own thing.
Yeah, exactly. You set yourself up for success, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I like that.
100%.
I like that.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. And I have one last question I ask all my guests. And what
Yeah.
is it you would like to leave our listeners with?
Um, it would make me so happy if just one person who's listening to this, who's been living with sleep problems for
Hmm.
a period of time, actually does something and goes and seeks help. Because we know that there are so many people out there, millions upon millions of people, who don't want to bother their doctors with a sleep problem because they think it's
Hmm.
not a medical problem, or they think it's not, that there are no effective treatments for it, or they think that all that they're going to be offered is some sleeping tablets, and they know that sleeping tablets are not the answer and they can be harmful, or they've been before and their doctor has just given them some sleeping tablets but said, don't really want to give you these, don't try not to take them if you can. There are much better, much more effective treatments out there, and seeing somebody who is experienced in treating sleep can be absolutely life changing. So if just one person takes it upon themselves to go and address their sleep issues and see somebody, that would make me a very happy man.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And if the listeners wanted to reach out to you, how could they connect with you? And we'll have this in the show notes as well.
Yeah, great, thanks. So they can connect with us through our website, which is www thesleepproject.life. You don't see very many .life websites, but it was a very good fit for us, we felt. So the
Yeah.
sleepproject.life is our website. We're also on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is at _sleep_project. We also work with businesses to improve their employee to improve
Oh,
their employee health through their employee wellbeing programs. If
yeah.
you work for a business who might be interested, we're also on LinkedIn, and you can find us there under the _sleep_project. So we're in a few different places. We have a YouTube channel as well. So those are kind of the main. We're just about to embark on a TikTok journey as well. So
Ah,
those are the main kind of places to find us. Or just drop us an email if that's your thing. If email's easier for you, drop us an email. We're at info@thesleepproject.life.
oh, I love it. Well, thank you, Dr. Eidn. I love what you're sharing with us. This is so important. And I think we gave some really good tips that can even get people start, like even if they created a routine, maybe all of a sudden they'll be sleeping better. I
Yeah,
certainly hope. But thank you so much.
it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.